Across America, storms have taken more than homes. They have taken entire towns. Winds howled like the voices of the dead. Floodwaters claimed streets like open graves. Lightning split the sky like cracks in reality. And when the storms passed, something else stayed behind. Ghosts did not rise from cemeteries. They rose from living rooms. From kitchens. From attics where people waited for rescue that never came. Their final screams soaked into the walls like water stains. Now, these towns stand broken and silent, roofs torn away, windows shattered like blind eyes staring at the sky. Houses tilt under the pressure of memories too heavy to forget. Boats sit on rooftops like tombstones. And when the wind returns, it carries voices that do not belong to the present. People say the hurricane winds still move the curtains. People say the tornadoes never really left. People say thunder speaks names that were never found. If you walked into one of these ruined towns and heard footsteps sloshing through water behind you, slow, wet, and paciente, would you turn around, or would you run before the storm found you too? Take a deep breath. We are going in. Hello, my dear friend. I hope you are somewhere safe tonight. Because where we are going, safety is not a memory. It is a wish. Across America, storms have carved paths through history. Hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, and tempests ripped apart towns and left behind skeletons of what once lived. But when the debris settled and the rain stopped, a different kind of storm remained. A storm of spirits. Some say these storm-ruined towns are cursed. Others say the dead are still trying to go home. Doors open by themselves as if someone is returning. Streetlights flicker like distress signals. Radios turn on in empty houses. Footsteps echo in places where no living soul walks anymore. The air smells like rain even on dry days, as if the storm breathes through the ruins. Locals refuse to visit after sunset. Travelers never stay long. And those who camp overnight wake up to water dripping from the ceiling, even when there is no roof left. So before we step through the debris and into the ghosts of wind and water, I want to ask you something. If a storm-shattered window revealed a figure staring out at you, soaked and silent, would you move closer to see who they were or run before lightning showed you too much? Take a breath, my friend. Let the wind guide us. Hollow Tide rests at the edge of the Louisiana marshlands, a place where land and water have slowly traded identities. Once a quiet fishing village, it is now a skeleton of docks and flooded houses. Streets that once carried trucks and families now hold drifting boats and broken pilings. The village feels as though it sank without ever truly drowning. Boats rest in the streets like driftwood coffins, their hulls split. Their ropes tangled around stop signs that rise only a few feet above the current. Some boats lean against porches, tilted and waterlogged, as if delivered there by a tide. Others float in place, tethered to nothing, gently circling like they are waiting for someone to board them. And taking them somewhere that no longer exists. During the day, Hollow Tide is quiet. The air hangs thick with humidity. And the water reflects the sky like polished metal. The docks stretch outward. Broken in segments. Ending abruptly where boards snapped under storms that rolled in year after year. Houses stand flooded to their windowsills. And what remains above water has been bleached by the sun. From a distance, everything looks still. But at night, the wind hums through broken windows. It carries a hollow tone, like the breath of an instrument carved from bone. The sound moves through the village in long notes, echoing off the walls of flooded homes. It turns the streets into corridors of wind and water, where the world feels paused between memory and abandonment. Locals say shadows walk the flooded roads without making ripples. Shapes that move slowly across the water, gliding from one submerged doorway to the next. They are not seen clearly, only noticed when lantern light or moonlight hits the surface just right. Their reflections do not match their form. Their silhouettes stretch too far behind them. Their steps do not disturb the tide. They move with purpose, as if searching for the homes that once belonged to them. Sometimes lanterns glow in houses underwater. The light appears faint at first, a dim shimmer beneath the surface. Then it brightens into a steady beam, illuminating windows that have been broken for years. The lanterns drift inside the rooms, as though carried by a hand that cannot be seen. Their glow wavers in the water, making it look like someone is walking through the flooded rooms, checking each corner, waiting for an answer that never comes. There are stories about the night the village changed. A storm moved in from the Gulf, stronger than the ones before it. The wind tore through the docks, and the shoreline fell inward. Water filled basements, then kitchens, then bedrooms. When the storm passed, Hollowtide was left half submerged. Some residents left. Others stayed, hoping the water would recede. It never did. Those who remained lived with the tide moving through their streets. They used boats the way others used bicycles, drifting from place to place. They adapted to the half-drowned world. But they whispered about footsteps at night, about voices echoing through the flooded houses. They heard knocking beneath the floorboards, even when the floor was water. Eventually, most left, abandoning their homes to the tide. But the stories followed them. Visitors who push small boats into Hollowtidia's waters at night speak of lights that follow. Lanterns drifting beneath the surface, matching the Boada's pace. The glow never rises above the waves. Like something below is escorting them, guiding or warning or simply watching. The water stays calm until the visitor turns toward the heart of the village. Then the current changes. It begins to pull inward, deeper, encouraging a direction no one intends to travel. Some claim to see figures standing on rooftops. Their forms are dark, their edges blurred by mist. They look toward the open marsh, as though waiting for something to return. Others say they see shapes through the windows, like silhouettes of families still gathering at tables long covered by water. But the shapes never turn. They never raise a hand. They simply remain in place, like memories trapped in the rooms that once held them. There is a house near the center of Hollowtide that locals will not speak about directly. Lantern light is seen there more often than anywhere else. Some visitors hear footsteps inside, though the house has no solid floor. Just water, debris, and echoes. No matter where a person stands in Hollowtide, the air feels different. As if the water moves with a rhythm that is not natural tide, rising and falling like breath. The lanterns glow like eyes beneath the waves. The shadows follow roads that no longer exist. Hollowtide is not violent. It is patient. It does not pull people under. The wind hums through windows like a lullaby for a world that refused to let go. The boats rest like coffins. The shadows walk without ripples. Lanterns glow in houses underwater. And the tide continues to move through the village like a memory that refuses to fade. The fishing village may be gone. But Hollowtide remains. Storm fell, Mississippi rests in a silent scar of land where a tornado once tore the town apart. The storm swept through without hesitation, snapping buildings and uprooting lives in a single violent path. Roofs vanished, ripped into the sky like pages torn from a book. Trees became spears, driven into the ground at impossible angles. Walls twisted, cracked, and bowed like broken ribs around the skeletons of houses that no longer had rooms. The storm left only fragments, pieces of a town held together by memory rather than structure. The tornado that destroyed Stormfell struck with no warning. No siren. No radio alert. Residents described the air changing in an instant. The sky went yellow, then green, then black. A pressure built so quickly that people felt their ears pop and their breath shorten. Then, without pause, the wind roared. A sound like a freight train colliding with thunder. In minutes, entire blocks were stripped to foundations. Asphalt peeled. Pipes bent. The town split as though something had taken hold of its center and pulled. Now, Stormfell remains as a hollow of ruin. Grass grows through fractured pavement. Mailboxes lean without houses behind them. The outlines of homes are traced only by concrete slabs and splintered boards. There are no intact doors. No windows that can still close. But visitors hear doors slam anyway. Sharp, echoing impacts that crack through the silence. As if wood still hangs on hinges that no longer exist. The sound travels between empty frames and broken walls. Like the memory of a house refusing to forget how it once functioned. Some say the wind cannot be trusted here. It moves differently, slipping through cracks and hollows like breath through the mouth of something resting just below waking. The wind rattles fragments of siding, knocks against fallen beams, and drags debris across the ground with purpose. It is not random. It feels like communication. Like the storm left behind a language of motion. Each broken house feels like an echo chamber of what it used to be. Fireplaces stand alone, no longer part of walls. Kitchen tiles lie exposed to open sky. A row of bathtub fixtures sits in the grass, tilted like monuments. Visitors who step inside these shells describe the sensation of being watched from the corners where walls used to stand. Not by people, but by the space itself. Like the rooms remember. Some hear knocking. Soft at first. Then louder. 3 taps. A pause. 3 more. The knocking continues even when approached, like something patient and steady waits for someone to answer. There are places in Stormfell where the wind still howls with the voice of the tornado. At the edge of town, where the storm first touched down, a narrow line of trees stands twisted and hardened. The bark is shredded but the trunks remain. The air hums there. Visitors claim the hum resonates in their bones, like a vibration rather than a sound. If they stand still long enough, the hum turns into whispers that move like breath against their ears. As one moves deeper into town, the destruction becomes stranger. A church steeple lies on its side, pointing toward a brick wall that somehow survived untouched. The steeple's bell is missing, yet sometimes a ringing can be heard at dusk. Not a clear chime. A dull, distant tone like metal moving in memory. Nearby, a school building sits with its roof peeled back, exposing classrooms like open pages. Chalkboards still hang, marked with lines that look like equations and sentences abandoned mid-thought. In what remains of a neighborhood street, the wind carries the scent of rain even on dry days. Visitors describe a moment when the air grows still, as though something listens. Then a slam echoes from the nearest ruin. A door that does not exist. A door that should not be able to close. The echo spreads through the street, bouncing off broken walls until it fades back into silence. Those who explore Stormfell after sunset experience the most unnerving signs. The wind dies out completely. The air thickens. The ruins seem to lean closer. And from the inside of shattered homes, footsteps can be heard moving across the debris. Then faster, as though someone begins to run. The footsteps stop the moment they are confronted. But the knocking continues. Always from the inside. Some believe the storm left something behind. Not spirits. Not ghosts. Something made of wind and force. Something that learned the shape of the town while tearing it apart. Something that remembers the layout of doors even though the doors are gone. Others think Stormfell remains suspended between the moment before destruction and the moment after, trapped in a loop of unfinished impact. There are no warnings posted at the town's edge. No fences. Only a broken sign leaning in the grass, the town's name barely visible beneath chipped paint. But those who step into Stormfell feel its presence. A tension in the air. A pressure behind the silence. And then, somewhere in the ruins, the first knock begins. 3 taps. A pause. 3 more. Like a request. Like an invitation. Stormfell sits beneath an open sky that still remembers the storm. The wind carries pieces of the past through the streets. The houses stand broken, but something inside them continues to move. Doors slam where no doors remain. Footsteps run where no floorboards hold weight. The knocking waits for someone to answer. Something still knocks from the inside of ruined houses. Even though there is nothing left to open. Clearwater Bend sits at the edge of Florida's coastal marshes, where the land meets the Gulf in a quiet stretch of water and mangrove. The town was never large, only a few streets, a handful of homes, and a marketplace that overlooked the inlet. Hurricanes swallowed it more than once. Storm surges pulled buildings apart, scattering roofs through the marsh like torn leaves. Each time, the town rebuilt. Each time, the sea took more back. Today, Clearwater Bend remains, but it feels like a place balanced between existing and being erased. The streets are muddy even on days without rain. The ground seems soft in places where it should be firm. Footsteps sink deeper than expected. And the mud trembles faintly as if something beneath the surface shifts when weight presses down. Locals say the soil never settled after the storms. They say the hurricanes churned the land until layers of earth and water blended together. Visitors talk about the sensation of walking on a surface that should not hold them. As though the ground might open if they stand still for too long. Fog hangs low across the streets, heavy and wet, clinging to the air like breath. Heavy and wet, clinging to the air like breath. Gathers along the shoreline and under stilted houses, creeping around fences and coiled hoses. Creeping around fences and coiled hoses. In the early mornings, it drifts inland along the roads like a tide of its own. From a distance, it looks harmless, just another coastal mist. But up close, the fog behaves differently. It moves against the wind. It lingers where it should thin. Some say it watches. Others swear the fog follows the living with intent. Windows in the older houses fog over on the inside, even when the air is dry. The moisture forms shapes on the glass. Not random streaks or cloudy patches, but impressions like someone rested a hand there. Fingers spread. Palm pressed flat. Always on the inside of the pane. Residents wipe the glass clean, but the marks return by morning. They face outward, as if something inside the house is looking out. Along the boardwalk, the storms left behind would warped by salt and sun. Nails rusted. Planks bowed. The sound of footsteps echoes strangely here, carrying farther than it should. People hear others walking even when the boards are empty. The sound does not fade like normal footsteps. It follows the listener, moving at the same pace, as though keeping track. If someone stops walking, the echo continues for one more step. Near the water, the fog thickens. It curls around the palms and mangroves, piling low like smoke. Objects disappear into it at arm's length. Shapes seem to stir within it, not formed enough to see but present enough to feel. A fisherman once described the fog as behaving like an audience, gathering silently at the shoreline as if waiting for a performance to begin. Clearwater Bend has stories, passed between residents like warnings rather than rumors. They talk about the hurricanes not as disasters, but as events that uncovered something. When the water receded, strange patterns marked the sand. Spirals like a map drawn for no one alive. Channels in the mud that resembled footprints far too wide to belong to any person. Some patterns remained even after fresh tides washed over them, as if the sea wanted them remembered. There are stories of voices heard through the fog. Not loud or frantic, but steady. Like someone speaking just out of sight. A conversation without a second participant. A voice carrying across water to someone who has not answered in years. When people step closer, the voice fades, replaced by the sound of shifting mud beneath their shoes. The marsh trails outside of town are rarely used now. Water collects in pools that seem deeper than the land around them. Reflections ripple before footsteps disturb the surface, as if something underwater moved first. The mud here is colder. The fog gathers thicker. Some have walked these trails and returned asking if anyone else was out there with them. They swear they saw shapes. They swear those shapes stopped whenever they turned around. Nothing hostile. Nothing rushes forward. Just stillness. Watching. Locals advise visitors to keep moving if the fog begins to close in. They say the stillness is what invites it. If someone stands still long enough, the fog grows curious. It draws closer in slow waves, curling around ankles, rising toward shoulders. The air grows colder. Breathing feels harder. Not suffocating, but shared, like something else is breathing with them. At the edge of the shoreline, where debris from past storms forms ragged lines along the sand, people have found objects washed in from the sea. Shoes with the laces still tied. Lanterns with cracked glass but fresh soot inside. A doorframe that looks burned though no fire touched the town. These items appear overnight, aligned like offerings laid carefully by the tide. Residents move them without telling anyone where they go. Night changes Clearwater Bend more than the storms ever did. The fog glows faintly under street lamps, holding light instead of reflecting it. The mud seems to shift beneath the roads, not enough to see, only enough to feel. Houses creak like they are adjusting to old memories. The shoreline hums with tide and air pressure, like the moment before thunder. People walking home at night describe the same sensation, that something is following them, not close enough to touch, but close enough to match their pace. Some believe the hurricanes did not take the town. They believe the storms revealed it. That Clearwater Bend was always meant to feel like a place waiting. Not haunted. Not cursed. A place where something beneath the mud listens. A place where fog chooses its path. A place where footsteps are never entirely alone. Some say the fog watches. Some say the fog follows. Broken Gale Township rests on the flat stretch of Texas plains where the horizon runs unbroken for miles. The land once held farms, ranch houses, and barns that stood proud against open sky. But everything changed the night the windstorm arrived. It did not come like normal storms do, rolling in with thunder or rain. It came suddenly, like the sky inhaled and exhaled all at once. By morning, barns lay collapsed like fallen monuments. Fences twisted in spirals. Windmills stood frozen mid-turn, blades bent backward as if forced against their nature. The township never recovered. It still stands, but something about it feels unfinished, like a breath half taken. It still stands, but something about it feels unfinished, like a breath half taken. But something about it feels unfinished, like a breath half taken. Something about it feels unfinished, like a breath half taken. Something about it feels unfinished, like a. Something about it feels unfinished, like a breath. Something about it feels unfinished, like. Something about it feels unfinished. Something about it feels unfinished. Unfinished, like a breath. Unfinished, like a breath half. Unfinished, like a breath half taken. The first thing people notice is the air. It never holds still. Flags flap even when the weather reports calm. Dust spins along the road in small coils, dancing in circles before scattering apart. Even on days when the sky is clear and the sun is warm, the breeze feels out of place. It pushes and pulls at clothing, at hair, at the senses. As though testing the people who enter. The first thing people notice is the air. It never holds still. Locals say the windstorm never fully left. They say the gusts that move through Broken Gale do not belong to weather. They belong to something that learned how to breathe. Walking through the township, the collapsed barns resemble graves rather than ruins. Roofs folded inward. Support beams leaning like tired bones. Some structures caved evenly, as if lowered by unseen hands instead of destroyed. Others broke apart in patterns that looked deliberate, as though shaped rather than toppled. It gives the impression of buildings laid to rest rather than torn down. Visitors report feeling watched, not by eyes, but by the movement of air itself. As if the wind considers every step they take. As if their presence changes the direction of the breeze. Sometimes, it pushes them forward. Other times, it holds them in place. Residents who remained after the storm speak quietly about the wind. They describe it as having moods. Some days it whispers along the fences like a warning. Other days it growls against doors, rattling windows as though it wants inside. On rare nights, it slips into houses through keyholes and cracks, cold enough to extinguish candles, strong enough to slam cabinets. It never breaks anything. It simply moves, restless and aware. Along the outskirts of town, the fences show signs of strange strain. Barbed wire twists in spirals, pulled tight or loosened as though gripped by invisible hands. The wind whistles through them, producing tones that sound almost vocal. Farmers once attempted to rebuild, but every attempt failed. Fresh boards warped overnight. Nails loosened as if pushed back out by pressure. New windmills spun against the breeze, turning in directions opposite the gusts. One rancher swore he saw dust swirl up into the shape of a figure standing by the old barn foundations. The shape dissolved the moment he blinked. There are stories about the night of the storm. Accounts of wind moving like a living thing, cutting across fields in narrow lines. Some say the gusts traveled low to the ground, moving like something crawling. Others claim the wind rose into towering spirals that paused before shifting direction, as if choosing where to go next. The storm did not strike everything at random. It chose. Travelers passing through Broken Gale often hear footsteps in the fields. Not heavy ones, just the soft press of movement in grass. The steps follow alongside them at a distance, never coming closer, never falling behind. If they stop walking, the steps stop. If they turn toward the sound, the wind changes direction and the grass lies flat. Closer to the town center, the air grows colder. Dust moves along the road in straight lines, not swirling like nature intends. Some people see shapes riding within the dust. Figures made of grit and air. They last for seconds before fading. At night, the township becomes something else entirely. The wind rises without warning. Shutters bang like heartbeat rhythms. The fences hum. The dust gathers into winding trails that move across the road like pathways being drawn. The air pushes through abandoned doorways, circling rooms like someone pacing. Bedrooms grow cold. Cabinets creak. Residents say the wind remembers the people who lived here. It remembers the routine of opening doors. The rhythm of chores. The shape of lives interrupted. They do not believe the wind is dangerous. They believe it is lonely. The most unsettling accounts come from those who stand in the fields after dark. They say the wind seems to breathe there. Inhale. Exhale. The grass leans forward, then backward. Dust rises, then falls. A rhythm too steady to be accidental. Too measured to be storm or breeze. Something in the land draws breath, as though testing the air for names and voices it once knew. Some claim to hear words in the gusts. Not speech, but hints of it. Vowels stretched into whistling notes. Consonants caught in the rattle of loose shingles. Like a language made of air and memory. One sentence repeated again and again, impossible to understand but undeniably spoken. Those who leave Broken Gale Township feel the wind follow. Their clothing tugs. Their car windows shake. The breeze presses against their backs like a hand urging them forward. It does not chase. It does not hold them. It simply remains close, as if deciding whether to let them go. Broken Gale still stands, not abandoned, but paused. A place where barns lie like graves. Where fences sing with wind. Where dust waits to rise. The air is never still. The land is never silent. Something here breathes with the wind. Shatter Coast in North Carolina sits along a stretch of shoreline where the ocean never fully calms. The waves arrive with a pressure that feels purposeful, as if they remember something. Years ago, a hurricane tore through the boardwalk that once lined this beach. Shops splintered into the water. The pier snapped in the middle and fell like a broken spine. The old carousel, once the centerpiece of the coast, was ripped from its foundation and scattered into the sea. After the storm passed, nothing remained but debris, ruin, and silence. Today, the sea returns pieces of what it took. Boards wash onto the sand, some warped by salt, others still bearing faded paint from storefronts long gone. The ocean pushes them back at high tide as though delivering offerings. Carousel panels with chipped illustrations of horses and stars appear at the shoreline, carried in by the current. Bench re-emerge in fragments. Glass bottles roll up the beach, intact where there should be shards. It looks like the ocean is trying to rebuild something, even if no one knows why. Locals speak of the beach with caution. They avoid the area after dusk. The coastline feels wrong in subtle ways. As if the distance between sea and shore changes whenever someone turns away. The sand seems to shift, burying debris and uncovering different pieces. As though the beach is rearranging itself. Even the tide patterns feel unusual. At times, the water crawls farther inland than it should. Reaching places untouched by storms since the collapse of the boardwalk. Near the ruins of the carousel, the air feels different. The ground there is still cracked, the foundation visible where the structure once stood. Some of the support poles stand half buried, leaning at angles that suggest they were pulled rather than pushed. The metal gears and the central spindle remain, rusted but still recognizable. They cast long shadows at sunset, stretching like spokes across the sand. It is here that people hear crying. The sound does not come from the ocean, nor from the dunes where wind sometimes whistles like voices. It comes from near the carousel ruins, drifting across the broken concrete. The crying is not faint or imagined. It is clear enough to distinguish breathing, enough to recognize the desperation in it, enough to make listeners step back. Sometimes it sounds like a child. Sometimes like an adult. Sometimes like something caught between breath and water. No one ever sees the source. Visitors describe the crying as close, like someone standing just out of sight. When they follow the sound, it moves. It shifts to the other side of the carousel foundation, or slips toward the shoreline. It never grows louder. It never quiets. It holds the same distance no matter how far someone walks. If approached directly, it stops abruptly, leaving only the ocean to fill the silence. After a few moments, the waves begin pushing debris ashore again. The pieces that return always relate to the boardwalk. Some are planks from the pier, still carrying the smell of saltwater and algae. Others are fragments of painted carousel horses, their eyes faded but their shapes unmistakable. A few rare items wash up that feel too large to be carried by the tide. Entire railing sections, still bolted together. Half of a vendor sign. A bent coin collector from the arcade. When the wind picks up, the carousel frame hums. The gears shift slightly. Sand trickles through the spokes. The ground seems to settle beneath the weight of something that should not be there anymore. Some visitors swear the carousel platform tilts as if trying to rise from the sand and complete a turn that was never finished. Those who have spent time near the ruins believe the storm did more than destroy the boardwalk. They believe it disrupted something beneath the surface. Some claim the carousel was already unstable long before the hurricane arrived. That strange noises were heard in the structure at night. That mirrors warped reflections. That the music sometimes played when the power was off. All of it dismissed as superstition, until the wind arrived and shattered the place into the sea. Now, people who explore the shoreline at night report seeing shapes in the water. They follow the curve of the waves as though pacing the shore from beneath. They linger near the carousel ruins before fading into darker water. Some remain still, as if watching. On nights when the tide is high, the crying blends with the wind. The two sounds twist together, becoming indistinguishable. The ocean pushes debris onto the beach faster, as if trying to finish something before the tide recedes. The objects arrive in patterns that resemble fragments of the old boardwalk layout. Pieces arrange themselves by accident or intention, forming partial outlines of walkways that used to exist. No one stays long when that begins. The beach does not chase them. The sea does not rise with threat. Yet there is an understanding shared by everyone who has heard the crying. Whatever remains here is not asking for help. It is remembering. The hurricane ripped the boardwalk apart. But memory remains suspended between land and water. Unfinished like the carousel that never made its final turn. Shatter Coast lives on as more than a ruined shoreline. It feels like a place where the boundary between the world before and the world after the storm never fully sealed. The sea keeps returning what it took. The carousel cries for what it lost. And those who listen carry the sound with them long after they leave. A hurricane ripped the boardwalk apart. Now the sea pushes pieces back onto the sand like offerings. People hear crying near the ruins of the old carousel. No one ever sees the source. East Hollow Ridge sits in the mountains of Tennessee, where the roads curve through dense trees and the wind carries the smell of wet earth. Once, it was a simple town built along the hillside. Families lived in houses that clung to the ridge, and narrow streets wound downward into a valley of fields and churchyards. Life was quiet there, shaped by seasons and storms. Then a single night changed everything. A storm rolled in from the south, heavy with rain. It struck the ridge with hours of uninterrupted downpour. The ground loosened. Roots tore free. The hillside began to shift. Before morning, half the town was gone. Mud and debris swept across homes in a single downward collapse, burying them beneath soil, rock, and broken timber. The ridge looked as though a piece of the mountain had been carved away in one motion. The remaining houses creak under the memory of pressure. Their foundations shifted in the storm, bending floors and splitting doorframes. Even now, years later, walls lean slightly off-center. The wood groans during the smallest breeze, like a voice trying to speak through the boards. Visitors describe the homes as if they are remembering weight, like they can still feel the mud pressing against their sides. The ruined part of town remains sealed beneath the earth. The hillside was never fully excavated. The soil hardened into a slope that resembles a scar. A single roof peak rises like a warning. Wild grass grows between the collapsed foundations, and trees have begun to take root in places where kitchens and living rooms once stood. Trees have begun to take root in places where kitchens and living rooms once stood. Time swallowed the structures as though the storm pushed the mountain forward and the town backward. It comes in intervals. Not constant. Not frantic. Just present enough to notice. 3 knocks. A pause. Then another. Some knocks sound deep, as though coming from rooms far under the slope. Others are lighter, like hands against wood. The sound travels through the ground and into the remaining houses. People standing on old floorboards feel it vibrate up through their feet. Some believe survivors never stopped trying to get out. The official records list those who perished in the collapse. Rescue teams worked for days, then weeks, until the mud hardened too deeply to dig further. They said there were no more voices beneath the soil. No movement. The work ended. The town accepted its loss. But stories lingered. People who visited the ridge in later years spoke of hearing faint sounds. Scratching. Knocking. Something rhythmic enough to resemble intention. The forest around East Hollow Ridge grew thicker after the storm. Trees lean inward as if trying to reclaim the land. Branches stretch over the road, forming an archway that blocks sunlight. When fog settles along the ridge, it feels like standing inside a memory. The air thickens. The wind stops. The world narrows to the sound of breath and the faint creaking of houses above and below. Some of the remaining homes still hold belongings from families who left. Furniture covered in dust. Photographs warped by moisture. A clock on a mantel frozen at a time no one remembers. On quiet nights, the clock hands tremble, even though the mechanisms are broken. Visitors swear they hear footsteps pacing a hallway that no longer leads anywhere. At the edge of the collapsed slope stands what used to be a school. The gymnasium floor has cracked down the center, and one corner of the roof hangs low. When rain comes, water pools there, draining slowly toward the earth. People who stand outside claim they hear something beneath the broken boards, like voices echoing through the gym, rising from the ground below. Not words. Just sound. A murmur like memory without language. The church sits closest to the ridge. Leans slightly forward, as though bowing over the buried town. Its bell fell during the storm, but no one removed it. Some say they hear the bell ring at night, faint and distant, even though it has not hung in the steeple for years. During storms, the ridge trembles. The houses that remain shift in their frames. Doors swing open without a touch. The knocking grows louder, like a response from below. Residents have boarded up windows to keep the sound out. But it travels through the walls. It settles in the floors. It waits. A few people believe the knocks are not calls for escape, but echoes. The memory of the night the storm came. The sound of fists against doors from those trapped inside, replaying itself again and again. Others believe the knocks are new. That something down there still tries to reach upward. No one stays in East Hollow Ridge for long. Travelers arrive curious, drawn by stories passed between towns. They leave quickly, unsettled by the silence. The houses shift like they are listening. The soil seems to pulse with memory. There are moments when the ground appears to move. Not visibly. Not like a tremor. More like a breath, rising slightly, then settling. The earth grows still. And the quiet returns, waiting for footsteps to break it again. East Hollow Ridge is not violent. It is not angry. It is a place suspended between disaster and memory. A town that did not fully fall and did not fully survive. The storm took half of it, and the mountain kept the rest. Visitors stand on the ridge and listen. They hear creaking wood. They hear the wind move like a sigh. And beneath the soil, in intervals like a heartbeat, they hear knocking. 3 knocks. A pause. Then another. New Ashport, Alabama is a ghost of a town, burned hollow by a disaster that came in the shape of a lightning strike. Years ago, a bolt fell from a clear sky and hit the main gas line beneath the center of town. It ignited instantly. Flames rose higher than rooftops, spreading faster than any warning could travel. Streets turned into corridors of fire. Houses fell inward as flames consumed beams and floors. Within hours, the town was gone. What remains today are charred skeletons of buildings, leaning at angles that look impossible. Walls are blackened, bowed, and brittle, like ash held together by memory alone. Roofs hang like scorched wings. Trees stand as pillars of charcoal, their branches splintered and twisted. Ash clings to the dirt roads like snow that never melts. Everything still smells faintly of smoke, even after all this time. No one lives in New Ashport anymore, but people still visit. They come out of curiosity, or superstition, or the strange pull that abandoned places carry. They walk the cracked roads and feel the heat that seems to linger in the air, as if the fire never really left. There is no birdsong here. No insects. No rustle of wind. The town feels paused, as if waiting for something to restart what ended. Lightning still strikes here. Even on clear days. Even with no clouds. Visitors standing in the silence may see a flash in the sky, quick and sharp like a signal. A bolt will fall, stabbing the ground with a sound that rattles broken windows and shakes the scorched remains of homes. The lightning leaves no smoke trail. It vanishes the moment it touches the earth, as if absorbed instead of released. Some say the sky remembers. Locals from neighboring towns refuse to enter after sundown. They tell stories of heat rising from the earth, like breath from an unseen furnace. They claim the burned houses glow faintly at night, as though embers still pulse beneath the charred wood. A few have spoken of seeing sparks dance along rooftops, tiny flashes like stars falling through the air. The old gas station at the entrance still stands. Its sign is melted and warped, but the pumps remain. The ground around the pumps is blackened in perfect circles, as if marked. When lightning hits, the air hums. The sensation feels less like weather and more like memory playing out again and again. At the center of town sits what remains of the marketplace. The fountain is cracked in half, waterless and filled with debris. Around it, charred storefronts lean inward, framing the space like a crater left by impact. If someone stands here long enough, they may feel the hairs on their arms rise. A charge in the air. A bolt will fall somewhere nearby. Always nearby. Never random. People who explore the houses report strange consistencies. The fire destroyed almost everything, yet the patterns repeat. Clocks frozen at the same moment. Burned calendars stopped on the same date. Melted metal fused in the same direction, as if pulled. The wind does not scatter these remnants. They remain exactly where they were left. Inside one house, the remains of a dining room table sit warped but recognizable. Chairs melted into their positions. Plates fused to the wood. The ceiling above is gone, open to the sky. Visitors have described feeling watched here, not by eyes, but by memory. As if the moment of disaster still hangs overhead like a storm that never finished falling. The church near the edge of town is one of the few structures still partially intact. Its bell remains. Sometimes it rings. Not from wind or hands. The tone wavers through the empty streets like a voice calling across time. The bell does not echo. The sound is swallowed by the town, as though the air is listening. There are scorch marks inside the church that tell their own story. Blackened streaks climb the walls in branching patterns that resemble lightning frozen in place. They reach toward the ceiling, toward the steeple, toward sky that still flickers with unseen storms. The patterns glow faintly when lightning strikes anywhere nearby, as if illuminated from within. Scientists who have visited New Ashport to study the phenomenon leave with more questions than answers. Instruments malfunction. Compasses spin. Static clings to clothing like charged dust. Cameras capture flashes of light that do not appear in the sky. Some recordings pick up low rumbles that sound like thunder, though the air is still. Theories vary. Some think leftover gas vapors create the conditions for spontaneous lightning. Others believe minerals in the soil attract electrical storms. But no theory explains why lightning falls even without clouds. No theory explains why the strikes cluster near the places where the fire began. No theory explains the hum that precedes each flash, like the town drawing breath. Like the town drawing breath. There is a belief whispered in nearby communities. It is the same lightning, falling again and again. It is paused, waiting for the spark that will finish what it started. The burned houses lean like scorched skeletons. And lightning still strikes without rain, without clouds, without warning. And it is waiting. Greywreck Harbor rests on the rocky coastline of Maine, where the waves crash harder than the wind and the air tastes like iron. The harbor earned its name after a storm strong enough to change the shape of the shoreline. Boats were thrown onto land that night, lifted like driftwood and dropped onto the rocks and docks. Some lie on their sides to this day, their hulls split, their anchors tangled in debris. Not for lack of trying, but because every attempt ended the same way. Ropes frayed. Crane malfunctioned. Chains snapped as if the harbor refused to let the boats go. Rust covers the docks like dried blood. It spreads across the boards in stains that resemble tide lines, yet it creeps higher than the water ever reaches. The metal cleats and railings are coated in it, flaking and coarse. Fishermen say the rust smells like more than salt. They say it smells like memory. Something left behind by the storm that changed everything. On quiet mornings, when the tide is low and the fog sits heavy on the water, the harbor feels frozen. The silence presses in from all sides. No gulls call overhead. No ropes slap against the masts. Even the ocean seems to hold its breath. But the stillness never lasts. A sound always breaks it. The scrape of metal against wood. Slow. Steady. Dragging. Anchors move across the docks without anyone touching them. Fishermen hear the chains rattling and look up to see anchors sliding across the boards, pulled by a force no one can see. The chains stretch as if gripped by invisible hands, links clinking against each other. Some anchors stop inches from the edge of the pier. Others drop into the water with a splash that echoes across the harbor. When someone walks over to inspect, the chain sits still, heavy and unmoving, like it never shifted at all. No one is holding the chain. Along the shoreline, remnants of the storm remain embedded in the rocks. Nets tangled like spiderwebs. Wooden crates crushed into splinters. Masts broken in half. The storm came decades ago, but every year the debris seems to rearrange itself. A section of hull appears farther up the beach. A buoy rolls inland though the wind never touched it. Old ropes coil themselves, as if waiting to be used again. Some boats still sit half buried in the sand. The wood is gray from age, and the windows are shattered. When people walk near them, they sometimes hear footsteps inside. Not the scurrying of animals or the creak of settling boards. Heavy steps. Boots crossing a deck that no longer floats. If the listener moves closer, the footsteps stop. If they walk away, the steps continue. Greywreck Harbor has a history of disappearances. Not the dramatic kind, not overnight evacuations or empty docks left with engines still warm. These vanishings happened slowly. One fisherman never returned from checking his nets. Another went to secure a mooring line and was gone before the others finished tying theirs. Their belongings remained. But the people themselves were missing. Some locals believe the storm did more than destroy boats. They think it opened something beneath the harbor. A passage. A memory. A path the water has not forgotten. They say the anchors are not being dragged at random. They are being guided, like someone is trying to moor a ship that has not yet arrived. Like a lost crew is trying to dock again. At night, the harbor changes. The wind dies down. The water grows still. The rust seems darker, like wet metal, even on dry nights. And the dragging begins again. Then louder. Anchors pulled across the boards. Chains uncoiling. The sound echoes across the harbor like a summons. Some have seen shapes on the decks of the wrecked boats. Those who witness them never stay long. They leave, but they do not forget what they saw. A crew that never left. A watch that never ended. There are places on the dock where the boards feel different. Softer. Springing beneath the feet like something shifts under them. Some people avoid these spots entirely. Others step there intentionally, thinking the harbor will reveal its secret. A few claim they felt someone brush past them, a presence rushing toward the water. Cold. Damp. Focused. The tide comes in quickly at Greywreck Harbor, faster than physics should allow. It climbs the rocks, touches the abandoned boats, and retreats like a breath. Each time it returns, more rust stains appear. The stains form shapes, spreading across planks like outlines of hulls and anchors. Some resemble handprints, as if something pulled itself up from the water. The tide returns, and the cycle repeats. Greywreck Harbor does not feel like a place haunted by anger. The boats on land still face the water, as though ready to launch. The chains stretch toward the sea, as if expecting to be lifted. The anchors drag across the dock, slow and steady, like someone calling for a line to be secured. The harbor holds memory in metal and salt. Boats thrown onto land and never moved again. Rust spreading like dried blood. Anchors dragging themselves across the wood. But no one is holding the chain. Whispering Pines sits in a quiet corner of Arkansas, tucked between overgrown roads and fields where the grass grows tall enough to hide broken fence posts. The forest was once an ordinary stretch of pine, straight and tall, spaced cleanly for logging and wildlife paths. But the tornado changed everything. It tore through the region with a force that reshaped the land. Trees did not fall. They twisted. Hundreds of trunks bent inward toward the center of the woodland, as if something had reached down, gripped them, and turned them toward each other. Now they stand like curved pillars, clawing at the sky with branches shaped like hands. The forest has never recovered. And neither has the sound. When the wind blows, the trees moan. The sound moves through the pines like breath through a hollow instrument. Long, low groans that echo through the branches. Some compare it to an old church organ, others to distant voices carried through stone corridors. But those who have listened carefully say it is neither accident nor wind alone. The noise feels formed, shaped around syllables. And sometimes it sounds like speech. Locals call the place Whispering Pines not because the forest murmurs, but because it calls. The ground inside the tree changes texture. Soil shifts from firm to loose. Pine needles gather in spirals rather than natural scatter. Some say it looks like the wind carves paths through the forest floor, leaving trails meant to be followed. The twisted trees lean toward one another, branches interlocking overhead. They form arches, like ribs curving into a shelter or a cage. On still days, the forest is silent. But even then, something feels present. Watching. Waiting for the wind to return. Visitors have described the same experience. They step inside and feel the air thicken, as though the forest holds its breath for them. The pines creak in slow waves, like bones settling. Then, as the breeze rises, the moaning begins. At first it is only noise. A long, drawn-out tone. But as the wind strengthens, the sound shifts. It breaks into fragments. Vowels stretched between branches. Consonants scraped across bark. Some hear names. Spoken slowly, like a roll call. Some names belong to those still living. Others match people long gone. A few match no one at all. There are stories of travelers who heard their own name called from the trees, stretched thin by wind, resonant and unfamiliar, as though spoken by a voice that learned language by listening to breath alone. Others hear prayers. Half-finished pleas carried through the canopy. Lines that begin with hope and end in wind. They do not ask for mercy. They ask for memory. Like people afraid of being forgotten. Then there are the warnings. It is unclear whether the forest is protecting those who enter or protecting itself from them. They only lean closer, like listeners bending toward a whisper. The tornado that reshaped the forest left no ordinary destruction. It moved in a way that defied pattern. Straight-line winds bent trees without snapping them. Roots remained intact as if the earth held them in place during the storm. Some believe the tornado was only a carrier for something else. A breath entering the land. The first voice that taught the wind to speak. Hunting parties that crossed the forest after the storm told the same story. They returned with no game, their hounds refusing to enter the deeper sections. The dogs bristled, tails tucked, whining as though facing a threat they could not see. One hunter claimed the wind circled them, not blowing from one direction, but rising from every side. He heard footsteps in the pine needles but saw nothing there. He swore the trees bent closer as he turned, pushing him gently back toward the path he came from. Campers who spent the night nearby described dreams of standing between the trees. Listening to someone speak from above. They awoke to find pine needles caught in their clothing and dirt across their hands. As though they had walked through the night without knowing. They left before sunrise. The twisted trunks hold marks that resemble claw scores. But they do not cut bark. They press into it. Smooth indentations run along the sides, like fingers trailing across wood. The grooves follow a pattern, repeating from tree to tree. As if something walked through the forest once, touching each trunk in greeting or farewell. The wind carries more than sound now. It carries memory. People who visit Whispering Pines say the forest follows them home. They hear branches creak outside their windows. They feel a breeze in rooms with closed doors. At night, they hear faint whispers at the edge of sleep. Words they almost recognize. Names said like reminders. Prayers said like echoes. Warnings said too late. Whispering Pines remains twisted inward, a forest that looks less like destruction and more like design. The wind speaks when it chooses. And the sound that rises through the branches is not merely weather. It breathes. It remembers. And when the wind blows just right, it calls your name. Silent Crossroads, Oklahoma, rests in a flat stretch of land where storms roll across the sky without warning. The roads here cut through fields like scars, long and straight, disappearing into distant thunder. At the center of these intersecting paths stands a place that feels wrong in a quiet, patient way. Telephone poles lean at odd angles, their silhouettes warped against the horizon. Lines stretch between them like black threads, sagging lower than they should, swaying even when the wind is still. In daylight, Silent Crossroads looks abandoned. The cracked pavement is softened by creeping weeds. The houses nearby sit empty with their windows boarded or broken. Doors hang loose on their hinges. Dust clings to every surface inside. There is no sign of life. Yet the utility poles remain. Their wires hum faintly, carrying signals to nowhere. At night, the crossroads changes. The sagging wires sway like ropes, forming curved shapes in the dark. They move as if responding to something unseen, something that touches them from above or below. The poles groan when lightning flashes, as though the wood remembers storms from long before the town emptied. When storm clouds gather, the phones ring. Old rotary phones inside abandoned homes begin to trill in sequence. Not randomly, but one after another, as though someone is dialing through each house. The ringing echoes down hallways stripped of furniture, across rooms where wallpaper peels like loose skin. No electricity should be running. No service should reach these lines. Yet the calls continue. Those who have dared to answer describe the same experience. No voice greets them. Only breathing. Then deeper. Like whoever is on the other end is adjusting. Then deeper, like whoever is on the other end is adjusting, leaning closer, waiting for the person who answered to speak. It never demands or pleads. It simply waits, steady and cold, like a presence that does not need words to be understood. Like a presence that does not need words to be understood. Steady and cold. Locals who live miles from the crossroads warn travelers to ignore the phones. They say the calls are not a request, but an invitation. No one knows who or what waits on the other end. Some believe the calls come from underground, from lines buried in soil that has not been disturbed in decades. Others think the calls are remnants of old conversations replaying, trapped in the wires like ghosts of voices that never finished what they needed to say. The houses surrounding the crossroads were once lived in. Families built lives there, close enough to neighbors to visit but far enough for isolation to settle in. Over the years, storms grew worse. Tornadoes circled the fields more often. Lightning found the same stretch of ground repeatedly, striking poles like markers. People moved away. Homes were boarded up. Utilities were shut off. Yet the phones ring when storms approach, as though those who left are still expected to answer. The crossroads itself feels like the center of something. The air pressure changes when entering the intersection. The wind changes direction. Even animals avoid the area. Birds refuse to land on the wires. Cattle refuse to cross the road. Dogs whimper when brought near, tugging backward as if pulled by instinct. During thunderstorms, the wires spark. Not with bright bolts of electricity but with small flickers of light, like pulses traveling along the lines. The glow moves toward the houses. Some say the lights resemble signals, traveling message by message to receivers that have not been used in years. The hum in the wires grows louder, resonating with a tone too low to be wind and too steady to be thunder. It is during those storms that the calls are the clearest. If someone stands near the houses, they can hear the ring echo from inside. It sounds urgent, but not desperate. It sounds like expectation. Those who have pressed their ears to the door claim they heard breathing even before answering the phone. As if the presence on the other end already knew they were there. There are rumors of what happens if someone speaks. One story tells of a traveler who whispered a greeting into the receiver. The breathing stopped. A long silence followed, broken by a single inhale that sounded closer than the line should allow. The caller hung up and left the house. They did not return. They claim the phone began ringing again before they reached the street. Another rumor speaks of a storm that severed several poles. The next morning, the wires lay across the road, yet the phones continued to ring. The breathing was louder. As though the severed lines drew the presence closer to the surface. Silent Crossroads is not violent. It does not chase or threaten. It waits. The wires sway like nooses in the night, as if something invisible walks beneath them. The phones ring in abandoned homes when storms approach. Those who answer hear breathing. Just breathing. As if someone is waiting for them to speak. The storm clouds pass. The wind moves on. The crossroads remains. Floodgate Parish rests in a quiet part of Georgia, where winding roads pass through marshes and farmland before narrowing into a small community of homes and storefronts. It is a place that once felt safe, sheltered by distance rather than walls. Then the flash flood came. It swept through the parish with a force no one expected, filling streets and houses faster than doors could be opened. The water surged upward like something alive, rising through living rooms, hallways, and staircases before retreating just as quickly, leaving silence in its wake. Water marks stain the walls like ghosts rising higher and higher. Faded brown lines run across wallpaper and paint, showing just how far the water climbed. Some marks reach halfway up the windows. Some climb into the second story. In one house, a ring of water damage circles a chandelier, as if the flood reached upward to touch it. The stains remain even after repairs. Even after paint. They resurface again, slowly, like the memory of water returning through the walls. The parish never fully returned to what it was. Some homes were abandoned, their windows boarded. Others were rebuilt but never reoccupied. The flood left something behind that cannot be measured in inches or gallons. People who remain speak of footsteps at night. Floorboards that creak like someone is walking through the house, dripping water. Not heavy. Not aggressive. Just steady steps, moving room to room. Wet footprints appear on dry floors. They start at the doorway, small puddles forming into the shape of prints. They continue across hardwood and tile, leaving a trail of water that does not match the shape of any shoe or bare foot known. The prints lead down hallways and around corners, dripping as they go. They never smear. Never fade until morning. They remain as clear as if water were still falling from the foot that made them. Sometimes they lead to bedrooms. Homeowners wake to find prints just inside the doorway, pausing as though someone stood there in the night, watching. The floor around the prints is dry. Only the footsteps remain. They continue toward the bed. Some prints stop at the foot of it. Others move around to the side. And some lead directly to the place where a person sleeps. Sometimes they lead to beds. Other times they move around to the side. And some lead directly to the place where a person sleeps. Sheets dampen in narrow shapes, as if someone sat there for a moment. Pillows hold a darker stain like hair soaked with water rested there. The mattress feels cold, but not in the way of air conditioning or weather. Cold like standing water. Cold like memory. There is no puddle on the floor. No leaking roof. Just the impression that someone or something paused there. The sound of dripping water echoes through houses even when the pipes are dry. It rolls down hallways and through kitchens, tapping rhythmically like drops falling into a basin. Residents place buckets beneath the sound, but the buckets remain empty. The dripping continues. Always from somewhere just out of sight. Locals trace the flood's path by following the marks it left. Some yards still hold debris that rose with the water and stayed when it fell. Toys. Branches. Shingles. A mailbox lodged sideways against a tree. In the church, hymnals water-warped at the edges line the pews. One page always falls open to the same song no matter how often it is closed. The schoolhouse near the center of the parish stands almost untouched from the outside. But the floors within are permanently warped. On some mornings, the chalkboard is streaked as if a wet hand passed across it. Not enough to erase words. Just enough to blur them. The desks remain dry. The handprints never are. Visitors exploring abandoned homes feel the air shift. It smells like river water. Like the moment rain begins. The walls seem to breathe, expanding and contracting with the memory of the flood. People stepping across thresholds hear sounds beneath them, like water rushing through the floorboards. They pull back instinctively. The sound fades, returning to silence as if waiting for another footstep. On storm nights, the parish feels different. The walls of every home seem to tighten with anticipation. The wallpaper curls slightly at the edges, as if reacting to moisture that has not yet touched it. And the footprints return. Heavier. More defined. Like the steps of someone wading through rising water. Some believe the floodwaters carried more than debris. That whatever moved through the parish did not leave with the tide. It stayed. It lingers like a question unanswered. Not a haunting of anger or vengeance. Something quieter. Something searching. People who moved away speak of one final sound before they locked their doors for the last time. A knock. Not on the wall. Not on the window. From beneath the floor. A pulse of pressure beneath their feet. A reminder of how fast the water once rose. Floodgate Parish stands as a place changed by what came through it. Houses hold water marks like scars. Floors remember footsteps that should not exist. Wet prints appear on surfaces untouched by rain. They lead to bedrooms. They lead to beds. They mark paths through homes that were never fully emptied. They mark paths through homes that were never fully emptied. The flood is long gone. But its memory moves like water. Rising. Receding. Returning. Rainwatch Village sits deep within the forests of Washington, hidden between tall evergreens and winding rivers that once connected it to the outside world. Years ago, a storm swept through the region. The river swelled, the current surged. And the only bridge leading in or out was carried away like driftwood. When the water settled, the village remained on its own. No one rebuilt. No rescue crews came. The town slipped quietly from memory. Those who visit today find a place untouched by time and yet changed by something unseen. Rain falls here even on sunny days. The sky above can be bright and blue, yet droplets drift down like mist, touching rooftops, roads, and skin. They fall with the sound of ordinary rain, soft and rhythmic, but they leave no mark. Clothes do not dampen. Hair does not curl. Puddles never form. The water vanishes on contact, like memory evaporating before it can settle. Visitors describe the sensation of the rain as real yet unreal. A cold tap on the shoulder. A drop on the back of a hand. A bead tracing down a cheek. Instinct says to wipe it away, but fingers return dry. The rain continues, indifferent to weather or season. Some believe it is the storm repeating itself, not in force, but in residue. As if the rain never learned how to stop. The abandoned homes feel lived in, not decayed. Plates rest on tables. Books sit open. Shoes wait beside doors. Nothing shows signs of mold or ruin, only stillness. If someone listens closely, the faint sound of rain on rooftops fills the silence. But the roofs remain dry to the touch. At the center of Rainwatch Village sits a well. The bucket hangs in place, rope-taut and unmoving despite the gentle wind. Those who peer inside describe seeing water that ripples like something disturbed the surface. But no stone dropped. No leaf fell. The ripples appear on their own, tapping the edges like footsteps pacing beneath the water. The schoolhouse is the place most visitors remember. Desks sit in neat rows, chalk rests on the board, and a lesson is half-written as though abandoned mid-sentence. The windows reflect raindrops sliding downward, yet the glass remains clear. Some say they can hear children laughing faintly between the drops, not joyful laughter, but the echo of a moment that has not let go. The road leading out of town ends where the bridge once stood. On the riverbank, wooden posts lean at angles, the remains of supports pulled apart by the storm. The river flows quietly now, deceptively calm. Those who stand at the edge describe drops hitting the water without creating rings. The droplets disappear on impact, as if absorbed before they touched the surface. Some believe the villagers left after the bridge fell. Others think they never had the chance. There are stories of footprints leading toward the riverbank, only to stop abruptly. There are rumors of voices calling through the rain, too faint to understand. A few claim they saw figures walking the streets at dusk, blurred like silhouettes through frosted glass. The figures turn corners and vanish, leaving no wet tracks behind. One traveler who reached Rainwatch on foot spoke of hearing doors open and close inside empty houses. They described chairs creaking as though someone sat down. They felt rain on their hands, their face, their clothes. When they looked down, they were dry. They left quickly and never returned. The forest around Rainwatch Village does not behave like the forest outside. Sound becomes muted. Birds refuse to perch on branches closest to town. The trees seem to lean away rather than toward. Trails that lead in feel longer than they should, as though the path stretches while being walked. Trails that lead out feel shorter, as though the village encourages leaving even while holding memory close. There is a belief whispered among locals in neighboring towns. They say Rainwatch is not abandoned. They say it is ongoing. The people never left because the storm never released them. The rain continues because the moment continues. The storm's echo falls from a sky that does not need clouds. It leaves no mark because it exists between what happened and what should have ended. Visitors who leave describe the sensation of rain following them into the forest. The tapping on their shoulders grows softer and softer until it stops. But for days after, some swear they feel a drop on their skin without warning. They wipe their hands and find nothing there. Rainwatch Village remains isolated, quiet, and suspended in time's unfinished sentence. The streets echo with the memory of footsteps. The air carries the sound of rain that does not wet the earth. And the moment the storm ended continues, drop by drop. Rain falls here even on sunny days. It touches the skin, but leaves no mark. Deadwind Junction sits in the Kansas plains, far beyond the last stretch of paved road, where dust storms move like living walls across the horizon. What was once a railway stop and trading town now lies still, swallowed by sand that pours through broken windows and fills every doorway. The streets are buried up to the knees in places, drifts pressed against weathered storefronts like burial soil. Wind carves shapes into the dunes, smoothing them one day, tearing them open the next. The town seems caught in a moment between being lost and being found. The dust storms that overtook Deadwind Junction were unlike anything recorded. They came in sequence, one after another, leaving no time for recovery. Residents fled, some on foot, others by rail, abandoning buildings that were once thriving. Homes, shops, even the small hotel near the depot became shells. The wind sealed the town shut with layers of dust that gleam like bone in the sunlight. Visitors who arrive now find objects half buried throughout the streets. A rocking chair with only the top of the backrest visible. A pocket watch filled with sand, its face cracked. A lantern half submerged like the earth tried to swallow it. The sand does not just cover. It reveals. It pulls items upward slowly, as if lifting them to the surface. No one can explain why the sand exposes things instead of burying them deeper. On still days, Deadwind Junction feels hollow, empty enough to echo. But most days are not still. Wind moves through the town like breath, stirring dust into the air until every street looks like a mirage. In some places, the sand lies so smoothly that it appears undisturbed for decades. In others, the surface is broken by shapes that resemble impressions of knees, hands, or the suggestion of someone trying to push upward. Sometimes the sand shifts. Not from wind. Not from footsteps. As if something underneath turns over. Those who have visited speak of moments when the ground seems to move in slow, rippling waves. A dune settling like a chest exhaling. A mound rising by inches before flattening again. It does not behave like natural earth. It behaves like a blanket drawn over something restless beneath it. Travelers freeze in place, unsure if the motion is real. Then the sand stills, and the doubt takes root. They leave without waiting to see if it will move again. The train depot at the edge of town stands leaning, its tracks buried beneath drifts. Its tracks buried beneath drifts. The station sign hangs crooked, its letters almost erased by wind and grit. The rails extend toward the horizon but disappear under the sand, as if the line was swallowed mile by mile. Some nights, people claim to hear a distant whistle. Not modern. Older. Rusted in tone, like metal worn thin. The sound cuts through the wind for a few seconds before fading, as though passing through a place it no longer belongs. Along the main street, storefront windows are fogged with dust. Inside, shelves remain stocked in fragments. Empty bottles sit in neat rows. Registers lie open, their drawers filled with sand instead of coins. The blacksmith's workshop holds tools arranged on a pegboard. But the handles crumble when touched. The schoolhouse still has desks, their surfaces coated in layers of grit. A chalkboard remains faintly marked, a half-finished lesson frozen in time. The hotel near the depot carries the heaviest stillness. Its lobby is buried waist-high, furniture poking through the dust like bones through earth. On the upper floor, hallway doors stand slightly ajar. Sand piles against them in crescents, like something pushed outward from underneath. One room contains boot prints circling the bed. The pattern is perfect, as if someone paced for hours. The prints lead to the window, then stop abruptly, like the sand decided to take back the rest. Doors here close on their own. Not with force. Softly, as if guided by a careful hand. Window frames creak at random, even without wind. The silence never stays long. It fills with faint sounds that do not match the empty landscape. Cloth dragging. Wood scraping. Breathing made of dust and air. The people who left Deadwind Junction never returned to reclaim what they had. The town remains untouched, yet it feels occupied in a way no one can explain. As though something unseen is still living the last day before the storm. As though routines continue beneath the sand. Steps taken. Doorways passed through. Objects handled gently, then put back under the dust. Travelers report feeling watched, not by eyes, but by the town itself. A pressure in the air. A pull at their clothes. An urge to keep moving, to avoid standing in one place for too long. If they pause, the dust gathers at their ankles. If they linger, the ground trembles faintly. Always faintly. Just enough to feel, never enough to prove. At sunset, Deadwind Junction looks like a photograph fading at the edges. The wind quiets for a moment. And the shadows stretch long across the dunes. They do not wait to see if it does. Deadwind Junction remains where the storm left it. Dust storms swallowed the town whole. Sand coats the ground like burial soil. Objects lie half-buried, revealed like bones. And in the quiet moments, the sand moves, as if something underneath turns over, waiting for a reason to surface. Crestline Bay sits along the California coast where the shoreline no longer looks like the edge of land, but like the aftermath of something tearing its way inland. Waves once rolled in gently, carrying seafoam and driftwood, but a series of violent tides changed everything. They struck like impacts rather than tides, carving the shore wide open. Sand and rock peeled away. Foundations cracked. Houses that once stood safely above the waterline now perch over the edge like structures waiting for their final collapse. The coastline resembles a wound, as though the ocean cut into the land. And refused to let it heal. What remains of Crestline Bay feels suspended between ruin and endurance. Houses lean forward on fractured stilts, their decks broken like bones jutting from skin. Windows hang loose, glass shattered but frames still clinging to rusted hinges. Some homes rest at angles that defy logic, tilted but upright, as if the sea has not yet decided whether to swallow them completely. When the tide is low, the beach looks like a battlefield of abandoned construction. When the tide rises, the shoreline becomes something else entirely. People say the houses groan. Not from wind. Not from settling wood. But from pressure. As if the sea pushes upward from beneath the pilings, straining against the structure like a rising breath. Boards flex. Nails pop in their sockets. Entire rooms shift. Those who have stayed during the high tide describe the sound as a chorus of slow, pained exhalations, like the houses are trying to speak but cannot. They say the groans travel from home to home in waves, each one answering the last in a low, shuddering call. Some believe the sea remembers what was built on its edge. And it intends to reclaim every inch. The balconies are the most unsettling part. They hang above the broken shoreline, warped and uneven. Many have railings snapped like ribs. The supports are splintered, half submerged in rising water. During the day, they look like remnants of a storm. But at dusk, when the light thins and the sea reflects the sky like fading glass, people report seeing figures there. They do not move. They do not wave. They do not call for help. They stare toward the ocean, as if waiting for something to rise from the water. Travelers who approach swear the figures vanish when spoken to, dissolving as though made of sea mist. Others say the figures remain, staring, uncaring of who watches them. On nights when fog rolls across the bay, the figures appear more clearly. Their outlines sharpen. Some lean against the broken rails. Others rest their hands on the doorframes. A few stand barefoot, as if the sea washed them up and placed them there. The ocean behaves strangely at Crestline Bay. The rise of the tide does not always follow predictability. Some nights, the water creeps forward without pause, reaching the doors of the lowest homes before pulling back in a single breath, as though testing the land's resistance. Other nights, the sea remains still for hours, unnaturally calm, like it is waiting for an invitation. There are stories about the first night the water rose too high. Residents woke to waves slamming against their foundations. The sea sounded like it was inhaling. Some claimed they saw wet handprints on sliding glass doors. Others heard footsteps pacing the decks above them. A few saw figures standing in their homes, dripping seawater onto the floorboards. After that night, many left. Some never returned. Those who stay speak of a presence in the water. Not a creature. Not a ghost. Something older. Something that does not walk or swim but presses through the tide like breath moving through lungs. They say the sea exerts intention, a pull that tries to draw the land back piece by piece. Steps on the shoreline vanish not from erosion, but from an unseen undertow pulling the sand as if erasing memory. Visitors who walk the beach find objects half buried at the water's edge. Not debris from storms, but fragments of the homes above. Doors that do not match any known structure. Pieces of stairway leading nowhere. As though the ocean returns the ruins one piece at a time, like it is offering them back before taking them again. When the tide climbs highest, the sound of groaning homes grows louder. Some claim to hear speech inside the noise. Whispered syllables between the creaking beams. Names spoken softly. Prayers offered to no one. Warnings carried on wind. The houses do not answer, but they shift as though listening. And the figures on the balconies continue to watch the water. On rare nights, a wave breaches the broken boundary and sweeps across the lower floors. Windows flood. Floors buckle. The sea pulls back with something in its wake, leaving puddles that do not evaporate and footprints that lead toward the door. They dry slowly, as though made by someone who has nowhere else to go. Locals say the sea is reclaiming the shoreline not out of anger, but out of inevitability. The houses stand on borrowed ground. The land was never meant to hold them. Crestline Bay is not haunted, they say. It is correcting itself. The sea does not destroy. It returns. And every night, when the tide rises, the water climbs higher against the foundation. And the houses groan like they know what is coming. Figures stand on broken balconies. The wind carries salt through shattered windows. The shoreline pulls inward like breath. The sea is reclaiming them. Black Rafter, South Carolina, sits along the coastline where hurricanes carve memory into wood and soil. The storm that struck this place arrived with no mercy, tearing apart the town in a single night. Roofs lifted like paper. Walls buckled inward. The houses that remained were split open, ceilings torn away to reveal their interiors like broken dollhouses. Rooms now sit exposed to the sky, rain falling where lights once glowed and moonlight resting where families once slept. Walking through Black Rafter feels like stepping into a moment frozen at the edge of disaster. Bedrooms are still furnished. Clothes remain folded in drawers. Dishes sit on tables as though dinner ended only minutes ago. Toys lie scattered across floors where children once played. Nothing suggests a planned evacuation. It looks as if families vanished, not fled, leaving their lives intact and unfinished. The silence is heavy in daylight. Wind moves through open rafters like breath through hollow ribs. Curtains flutter from windows with no panes. Floorboards shift underfoot where rainwater has warped the wood. The sun illuminates rooms that were never meant to be seen this way, stripped of shelter and privacy. The storm did not just damage the town. It revealed it. Locals rarely return. They speak about the storm in short sentences, as if the memory has weight they do not wish to carry. Those who venture close describe the feeling of being watched from the houses with missing roofs. The exposed rooms feel occupied even when empty. Beds are still made. Lamps still stand beside them. Photographs, untouched by wind or water, remain on dressers, staring into the sky. At night, black rafter changes. The wind does not howl the way it should through broken rafters. It quiets, like something else is moving through the town and the air steps aside to let it pass. The exposed floors creak in patterns too deliberate to be pressure settling. Footsteps echo across the remains of hallways that no longer have doors. They move slowly, room to room, crossing from one exposed floor to the next. Like someone following routines they lived before the storm arrived. People who stand at a distance say the steps pause whenever they watch. They resume only when attention drifts. A slow walk, measured and familiar, like someone checking rooms for the occupants who never came back. The pattern repeats through the night. Step. Step. Stop. Step. Crossing houses and foundations as though walls still exist to guide them. Some claim they have heard doors open, even though no doors remain standing. Hinges groan in the air, and then the silence returns. Others say they have seen shadows move through rooms where no one stands. Not the erratic flicker of trees or clouds, but the consistent shape of a person moving with purpose. Shadows that cross open rooms, pass through broken thresholds, and vanish where hallways used to be. The belongings left behind make the footsteps more unsettling. In another, breakfast plates sit on a table, untouched, coated in dust. A suitcase lies on a bed, half-packed, as if someone tried to leave but never finished. Drawers are closed, not ransacked. Closets remain full. These homes do not look abandoned. They look paused. Emergency teams searched after the storm. They found evidence of lives interrupted but no sign of where the families went. No forwarding addresses. No footprints in the mud leading to vehicles. No scattered debris trailing into the woods or out toward the highway. Whatever happened, it happened quietly. Not destruction, but removal. Some believe the storm did not take the families. They believe the town changed around them. That the hurricane peeled away the outer world. And something else filled the space left behind. The footsteps at night walk with memory, not confusion. They do not stumble or wander. They know where they are going, even without walls to show the way. The rafters that remain have turned black with time and soot, giving the town its name. Black triangles of broken timber rise from the houses like ribs pointing upward, skeletal frames outlined against the sky. In moonlight, they resemble charred remains, though no fire touched them. The hurricane alone did the damage, yet the rafters darkened as if something burned away the lines between shelter and exposure. Visitors who stay long enough feel something else. Not aggression. Not welcome. Recognition. As though the town remembers them, even if they have never been there before. Some feel the urge to step inside one of the open rooms. The floorboards seem to wait. The shadows seem to shift to make space. The wind pauses like a held breath. No one stays inside after dark. Those who have tried describe the same sensation. A weight settling in the room. A presence stepping through the doorway. Footsteps approaching across exposed floors. Slow. Certain. Familiar. No voice accompanies them. No figure materializes. Only the knowledge that someone is standing nearby, in a room without a ceiling, under a sky that looks back. Hurricane winds tore roofs away. Ceilings open to the sky. As if families vanished, not fled. At night, footsteps cross the exposed floors. Something still lives here, walking the floors at night. Something that remains in the routines, the steps, the rooms that no longer have walls. Moonbreak sits at the edge of Virginia's forest line, where the trees grow close and the hills rise like dark silhouettes against the sky. The hospital once stood as the town's tallest structure, a narrow concrete frame with long hallways and windows that flickered with fluorescent light. It served the region for decades, treating broken bones, winter fevers, and the quiet emergencies that come with small town life. But one night changed everything. Lightning struck the hospital. Not once, but twice, in the span of seconds. The first bolt hit the roof, shaking the building. The second tore through the highest floor and set fire to the rafters. Rain poured in through the broken ceiling. The roof collapsed before evacuations could begin. Walls buckled. Beams snapped. The power died. What remained was a building half open to the sky, lit only by lightning and flame. Patients were never evacuated. Some were trapped in their rooms. Others were moved into hallways but never reached the stairwell. Staff tried to reach them, but parts of the structure sealed itself with debris, making corridors impassable. When the storm passed, the hospital was left silent. Emergency crews arrived, but the damage ran deep. The building was abandoned rather than repaired. Now, hospital beds lie twisted in open rooms. Mattresses buckled and frames bent, resting where the ceiling gave way. Some beds are half buried beneath plaster and beams. Others sit untouched, as if waiting for someone to return. The curtains still hang from metal rails along the windows. They sway without a breeze, shifting in slow, rhythmic motions like they are responding to breath that no one can hear. Some say the patients never left. They believe that whatever remains is not restless, but present. A continuation of a night that never ended. Visitors walking past open rooms feel a pull of attention, like the air is aware of them. The temperature drops near the beds, cold enough to sting the skin. Those who stay too long hear soft sounds behind them. Not footsteps. Not movement. Just the suggestion of someone exhaling. Some say the doctors did leave. They claim the staff fled when they realized the upper floors could not be reached. Abandonment, not tragedy. Others deny it. They insist the doctors stayed until the end. There is no record to confirm one version over the other. Only the silence of the building and the memories held in its halls. The main lobby still holds its reception desk. Computers are long dead, but papers cling to clipboards. The chairs are arranged neatly, facing a television coated in dust. Visitors walking through the lobby swear they hear the low hum of electricity. The sound fades when addressed, slipping into the walls like a memory returning to where it hides. Stairwells lead to blocked floors. Debris fills each landing. The edges of the steps are cracked, as if heavy weight pressed down repeatedly long after the collapse. Flashlights reveal only fractured concrete and exposed wiring. On some nights, faint shapes seem to move beyond the rubble, like silhouettes passing through places where pathways once existed. They do not linger. They continue as if they know where they are going. The operating wing feels like a museum sealed mid-task. Tools remain on trays. Cabinets hang open. The tables beneath them are covered in dust. But some surfaces are wiped clean, as though a hand rested there recently. The air in that wing vibrates with a quiet pressure, like something presses gently against the walls. The pediatric hall stretches longer than memory should allow. The roof collapsed at one end, opening the corridor to the forest outside. Leaves drift into the hallway and gather where rainwater pools. Paper cranes made by children still hang from the ceiling by faded string. They spin slowly, though no draft touches them. Anyone standing beneath them hears a faint tapping, like small fingers striking the paper. In the west wing, wheelchairs sit lined against the wall. Their metal frames face inward, toward patient rooms that remain dark. On the floor between them, linoleum curls like peeling skin, revealing concrete beneath. When someone walks past, the wheelchairs shift slightly. Not enough to roll. Just enough to angle, as though reacting to motion. The morgue lies in the basement, where the walls sweat with moisture from the collapsed foundation. The power outage locked the doors years ago, but the handle trembles at night. Some hear the sound of metal striking metal, like something tapping from the other side. The pipes groan, and the air carries a smell like storm rain and earth. The courtyard outside the hospital is overgrown. Ivy climbs the walls, gripping broken windows. The roof's missing sections reveal rooms like open wounds. Beds glow beneath shattered ceilings. Curtains billow. Locals avoid moonbreak. They say the building responds to attention. That the silence deepens when someone steps inside. The air thickens, making each breath feel held by something unseen. There are no accusations in the quiet. No anger. Just presence. Like a moment paused between heartbeat and breath. The building is not loud. It does not demand fear. It waits. It listens. The beds remain. The curtains sway. Moonlight falls across the rooms, revealing spaces frozen in a night that has not truly passed. Some say the patients never left. Some say the doctors did. Moonbreak stands between those two beliefs, holding the unanswered space in its ruined halls, waiting for someone to step far enough inside to learn which one is true. Ridge of the Lost lies high in the Colorado mountains, where the air thins and the wind moves with the weight of winter, no matter the season. Long ago, a mining town clung to this ridge. Houses, cabins, and supply buildings lined a narrow path carved into the mountainside. Smoke once rose from chimneys. Lanterns once lit the snow. Voices once echoed across the cliffs. Then an avalanche came. A collapse of ice, wind, and stone, fast as lightning and heavy as the mountain itself. The miners never had time to run. Avalanche winds and ice crushed the town. Entire structures vanished beneath the weight of snow. Rooftops snapped. Beams shattered. Walls flattened. Some buildings disappeared completely. The miners and their families were caught in the collapse. When rescuers arrived days later, they found only pieces. A ridge of ruin. A place shaped by loss. Even now, snow blankets the ruins in every season. Hikers have climbed the ridge in mid-July and found the ground covered in fresh powder. Ice hangs from doorframes that no longer lead anywhere. The sun shines, but the heat never reaches the earth. The ridge holds winter as though the avalanche never stopped. Some believe the cold is natural. A strange pocket of weather. Others believe the ridge remembers the moment the avalanche struck and repeats it without force, only presence. The storm is gone, but the snow remains, like a memory that never melts. Those who explore the ruins find the remains of buildings frozen in time. Half-buried cabins lean at broken angles, their windows shattered. Metal tools lie rusted in the snow. Carts once used to haul or sit frozen in place, wheels locked by ice that never softens. The mines themselves are sealed by snow and rock, entrances buried like tombs. The ridge is quiet. Too quiet. Even the wind sounds muted, as though the snow absorbs sound instead of carrying it. Footprints appear on the snow. Not boot prints from hikers. Not trails from animals. Bare footprints. The shape of human feet, toes, and arches pressed into the powder. They are spaced like steps, moving forward from the ruins toward the tree line. The tracks are never deep, as though the person who made them was light, or made no weight at all. They start in places where no one stands. They end before reaching the forest, like whoever walked them vanished into the air. Some hikers have followed the prints, only to watch them fade. The snow smooths over the tracks without wind. The footprints disappear as though covered by a blanket pulled across them by unseen hands. Others have seen new prints form ahead of them, appearing one by one like something is still walking, still moving, still wandering the ridge. Barefoot. In the cold. People who camp near the ridge have reported the sound of breathing outside their tents. Slow and steady. Close enough to shake the canvas with frost. They find nothing. No prints. No tracks. Just the cold, holding its breath. There are stories from the few who stayed long enough to feel the ridge change. They speak of shapes in the white distance. Figures standing near the buried mines. Not solid forms, but outlines in the frozen air. Like silhouettes made of frost. Others have seen a single figure walking, pale against the snow, head down as if searching for something lost beneath the ice. No one has ever approached close enough to identify the figure. Before anyone gets near, the snow shifts. The ridge seems to stretch. The figure fades like breath on glass. Then the footprints appear again. Some believe the barefoot prints belong to the miners who never escaped. That when the avalanche came, they ran without boots, without coats, without direction. That they still run, carrying the instinct to flee even though there is nowhere left to go. Others think the footprints are warnings. A sign to turn back. A sign the ridge does not want company. Winter storms arrive here without clouds. A gust of wind. A sudden drop in temperature. Snow falling from an empty sky. When the snow clears, the prints return. Always barefoot. Always leading away. Never toward safety. There are claims that the ridge hums. A low tone beneath the wind, like the sound of rock shifting under ice. Those who hear it say it feels like being underground, like standing in the mine shafts that once ran beneath the town. Some feel pressure in their chest, like the air is heavier than the altitude should allow. The ridge does not welcome breath easily. And yet, the ruins remain. Not reclaimed by forest. Not swallowed by the mountain. Frozen in place. As if winter holds them in memory. Ridge of the Lost is not marked on most maps. Trails avoid it. Locals warn visitors away. They say the mountain takes things slowly. Not through violence, but through invitation. A whisper. A cold touch. A trail of footprints. They say the ridge still waits for them to finish the path they began. Steps across the white surface, like someone walked out barefoot into the cold. And the ridge of the lost breathes winter. Forever waiting for the melt that will never come. Fallen Crest stands on the outskirts of a New Jersey town where the trees bend toward the old school as if leaning in to listen. The building was once a place of lessons, chalk dust, and morning bells. But a superstorm drowned it in a single night. Streets became rivers. Parking lots became ponds. The school stood in the center of it all, a brick island swallowed by dark water. When the storm passed, the building remained, but its purpose did not. Inside, the halls are still. Water stains climb the walls in uneven lines, like marks left by a retreating tide. Desks float in frozen silence, wedged against doorways and railings where the water left them. Some rest upside down, their legs tangled like driftwood. Others hover just above the floor, lifted by debris trapped beneath. The classrooms smell of mildew and chalk, of paper that will never dry. Chalkboards still hold lessons cut off mid-sentence. Words trail off into nothing, the final strokes trembling as though the teacher's hand hesitated before the water broke through. Simple equations. Vocabulary lists. History references that freeze time on the day the storm came. Some boards have handprints smeared across them. Not frantic, not fearful. Just marks of interruption, like someone paused before finishing the lesson. Visitors who step into fallen crest describe the silence first. It is not the quiet of abandonment. It is the quiet of anticipation. A silence that feels occupied. Water drips from pipes even when it has not rained. Lockers creak open on their own, hinges swollen from years of damp. The metal doors bang shut slowly, as if pushed from the inside. Footsteps echo through the halls, not matching the visitor's stride. Sometimes ahead. Sometimes behind. Sometimes circling. There are places where water still stands. Small pools trapped in corners of the gym and cafeteria. In those reflections, the room appears unchanged, as if sunlight still fills the windows and voices still bounce off the walls. But the moment someone steps close, the reflection ripples. The scene shifts. The desks return to their broken positions. The ceiling stains darken. The illusion ends. People who explore deeper find the library. Shelves lean at odd angles, swollen with books that absorbed too much water. Pages cling together like leaves pressed in mud. A few chairs remain upright, clustered as if someone sat in them recently. The carpet is soft from decay, muffling every footstep. In this room, the air is colder. Some visitors hear the sound of chairs scraping, as if someone is pulling them out to sit, though none of them move. The sounds that unsettle people most are not the groans of the damaged building or the drip of water. It is the laughing. Visitors hear children laughing in the halls. Not screams. Not shouts. Laughter. Light. Playful. Innocent. It echoes around corners and fades near stairwells, as if following paths once taken every day. The laughter never changes. It never grows closer. It never moves away. Simply exists, suspended in place like the desks in the flooded rooms. No children remain. None have set foot here in years. Yet the sound persists. Some have heard the tap of shoes on tile, the slap of wet sneakers running just out of sight. Others have heard the squeak of a marker across a board, writing words that are no longer visible. One person claimed they heard a bell ring, crisp and clear, signaling the start of a class that has not begun in decades. The cafeteria is the room most visitors refuse to stay in. Tables are overturned, trays trapped under layers of silt. The serving counter is rusted, and the menu board above it still lists that week's lunches. The prices look like numbers from another time. The far corner holds the deepest water. It is dark and still, like an unbroken mirror. Some say shapes stand beneath the surface, only visible if someone looks long enough. Others say the water moves even when the room does not. In the gymnasium, basketballs float against the bleachers. The scoreboard flickers when clouds pass overhead. Though the power has been shut off for years. A whistle blows sometimes, one sharp note that echoes and dies. The bleachers creak. Some visitors feel the sensation of someone sitting beside them, shifting weight into the seat, though no one is there. Outside the building, the playground remains. Swings hang motionless, though the wind never seems to touch them. The slide is rusted through. Grass grows in patches, tall and unkempt, reclaiming what the storm began. Footprints appear in the mud sometimes. Small prints. Barefoot. Leading to the door. They vanish at the threshold. Locals avoid Fallen Crest now. They drive past without slowing. They do not look at the windows. They do not listen for laughter. They say the storm did not just drown the school. It stopped it. It froze it in the moment between lesson and fear. Between ordinary and impossible. Whatever remained inside stayed there. And whatever left never truly left. Fallen Crest feels like a photograph that holds more than an image. It holds memory. It holds motion. It holds sound. A school day sealed in water and time. Desks float in silence. Chalkboards wait for lessons to finish. Laughter echoes through empty halls. There are no children here. Only the memory of where they were. Stormwake Crossing lies on the outskirts of Illinois, where the old train yard sits like a scar across flat land. Rusted rails cut through weeds. Storage sheds lean sideways, their roofs peeled back by time and wind. Piles of overturned freight cars rest where they fell, frozen in the shape the storm left them. Locals say the place looks as if the wind tried to erase it. Not simply damage it, but take it apart. Piece by piece. Breath by breath. Before the wind burst, the yard was busy. Engines rolled through at all hours. Freight cars clanged together like iron heartbeats. Lantern light flickered down the tracks as workers prepared night runs into neighboring states. Then the windstorm came. Not a tornado. Not a front. Just wind. A blast of force that hit the yard like a collision. Carriages toppled. Tracks curled like ribbon. Windows shattered and glass scattered like ice across the platform. The storm arrived fast, and left faster, sweeping through the iron forest of trains without a drop of rain. After that night, the trains never ran again. But the sounds did. Rail workers who returned to salvage equipment reported hearing whistles echo across the yard. Not sharp blasts, but long, low tones that rolled like distant thunder. They insisted no trains were present. Nothing was connected to the lines. The engines sat cold. No pressure in their pipes. Yet the whistles blew, as if unseen conductors still signaled arrivals. At dusk, the wind gathers around the broken tracks. It slips between overturned carriages like someone walking a familiar route. Loose doors rattle. Metal groans. Air compresses against the collapsed engine housings and releases with a sound like breath leaving lungs. Even if no one is present, the wind moves in patterns. Not straight lines. Routes. It seems to follow the old paths of the trains. On quiet nights, strangers have heard wheels rolling. Not on gravel or wood, but on metal. The sound travels the length of the yard. First faint, like a memory. Then louder, like iron weight pressing forward. It does not fade. It passes. And some swear they feel the vibration beneath their feet. As though a locomotive is approaching at full speed. But nothing arrives. The sound continues into the distance. Swallowed by night. Stormwake Crossing earns its name from the way the air behaves. The same blast that destroyed the yard still seems to haunt it, trapped in the rails like an echo waiting to repeat. Grass leans in one direction even when the wind blows the other. Dust rises in a straight line, following where tracks once led. Near the old platform, the gusts form spirals that circle the boarding area like a crowd waiting for a train that will never stop. The most unsettling reports come from those who stand on the platform after dark. They claim the air changes temperature, cold near their ankles and warm near their chest, like the heat of an engine passing beside them. Lantern hooks sway without touch. The broken timetables rattle as if pages are being turned. And then there is the sensation of movement. Not footsteps. Not wind. The pressure of a train pulling in. The air bending around it. The headlights never appear. The cars never materialize. But the arrival does. Workers who tried to clear the yard found tools moved during the night. Wrenches laid out like offerings. Boxes stacked as though preparing cargo. Chalk markings appeared on the side of an overturned freight car. Numbers. Coordinates. The kind used for scheduling. No one claimed responsibility. The next morning, the markings were smeared, as though brushed by wind or by hands that did not want to be seen. The old station office still stands. Its windows are clouded with dust, but on certain nights, light flickers behind them. Not electric. Not flame. Just a dull glow like a lantern swinging inside. The platform speakers, long disconnected, crackle with static. They hum like a voice clearing its throat. Sometimes a sound breaks through. Not speech. Not instruction. Just the rhythm of announcements without words. No one stays near the yard for long. There are stories of a figure seen walking the tracks. Not ghostly. Not glowing. Just a silhouette. A coat blown back by wind that does not touch the trees. Boots that leave no prints in dirt. The figure walks alongside invisible trains, keeping pace with something that cannot be seen. If spoken to, it does not answer. It turns its head, just slightly, acknowledging the voice. And then it vanishes behind an overturned engine as though stepping into a space that should not exist. People who linger feel pulled forward, as if something wants them to board. They step toward the tracks without thinking. Some reach for non-existent railings. A few snap out of it just before stepping off the platform. They back away, breath shaking, unsure where the impulse came from. They say the yard feels like a station waiting for passengers. No trains run here anymore. Yet arrivals continue. It is as if the storm did not destroy the yard, but opened it. As if the wind carved a path not through land, but through time. A door pulled open by force. A route to something that keeps coming back. The whistles blow. The wheels roll. The air shifts like metal weight pushing forward. Stormwake Crossing remains a place caught between motion and ruin. Tracks bent but still leading somewhere. Engines overturned but still humming. A station without trains, waiting for something to return. And every night, when the wind rises and the whistles echo through the broken yard, it feels like the storm that ended everything is still delivering something to the platform. Something is still arriving. The town the storm never left sits at the edge of nowhere, past roads that maps refuse to acknowledge. Travelers describe the approach as ordinary at first. The sky is clear. The wind is calm. The world behaves as it should. But somewhere along the last stretch of road, the weather changes without warning. Clouds gather in a perfect circle above the town. Rain falls in a ring, surrounding the ruins like a barrier. The storm does not drift. It does not expand. It does not weaken. It simply remains, as if anchored to the ground beneath it. Crossing the boundary feels like stepping into another world. The moment the first drop of rain hits, the wind surges. The wind claws at clothes and hair, tugging like hands trying to pull visitors backward. Thunder rolls through the air and into the earth, vibrating through bone and pavement. The sky is a constant bruised gray, flickering with lightning that rarely strikes but never rests. The storm is alive in a way that ordinary storms are not. It breathes. It watches. It waits. The town itself is a skeleton of what it once was. Buildings lean around corners like memories refusing to fall. Windows have shattered, their frames rattling with every gust. Walls buckle under the pressure of decades of rain. Every surface glistens with water, as though the storm is painting the town in layers of permanence. Cars sit abandoned where they stalled long ago. Their metal is rusted, their tires swallowed by mud. Plants do not grow here. The soil is too saturated to hold new life. Some towns rebuild. Some towns recover. But this one never stopped storming. The streets are never dry. Puddles stretch across intersections in shapes that reflect the broken lights overhead. Storm drains overflow, unable to swallow the endless downpour. The sidewalks are slick with moss and neglect. Signs that once welcomed visitors hang crooked and unreadable. No music from the houses. No lamps burning behind curtains. And yet, the town is not empty. Inside the rain, silhouettes walk. They move slowly, their outlines distorted by the sheets of water. Some stand in doorways. Some sit on porches with heads bowed. Others drift through the streets in quiet procession. Their clothes cling to their bodies, soaked through and heavy. Their faces are obscured by the downpour. They leave footprints in puddles that fill instantly as the storm continues to fall. They do not call out. They do not approach. They simply exist, as though walking a path they can no longer leave. Those who have seen them up close describe a feeling more than a sight. The silhouettes feel aware, like they notice the living but choose not to react. They tilt their heads slightly when someone passes, acknowledging them without expression. There is no hostility in their presence, only inevitability. As if they are waiting for someone to join them. As if they know that anyone who enters will stay. It is said that the people who once lived here never left the storm. When the hurricane first arrived, the town expected to wait it out. The residents boarded windows, stored supplies, lit candles. But the storm did not pass. Hours turned into days. Days became weeks. Families tried to evacuate, but the wind forced them back. Roads vanished beneath floodwater. Communication lines snapped. The storm held the town in place, and the people remained inside it, unable to escape. No one knows what happened to them. Bodies were never found. Belongings remained where they were left. Houses preserved the smallest moments of daily life. Plates still sit on dinner tables. Clothing still hangs in closets. Personal artifacts rest untouched, as though time stopped before decision could be made. Whatever occurred did not leave behind evidence. Only presence. Visitors who step into the storm always describe the same moment of realization. When they try to leave, the rain thickens. The wind shifts direction. The boundary they crossed disappears. The road behind them is gone, replaced by storm and distance. Paths curve back toward the center of town. The storm closes behind them like a door, sealing the exit with rain and lightning. There are no eyewitness accounts of someone finding their way out. Only stories from those who reached the edge but never crossed it again. Thunder shakes the ground in intervals like a heartbeat. The sound is so deep it feels like it comes from below, not above. Lightning illuminates the silhouettes for fractions of seconds, revealing their stillness. In those flashes, the streets look like a photograph of life holding itself together beneath impossible circumstances. Then the darkness returns, and the storm continues. Some believe the town is a threshold. A place caught between what happened and what comes next. Others think the storm is a gatekeeper. Protecting something or containing something. There are theories that the people inside are not trapped, but anchored. Bound to roads they can no longer leave. Perhaps they do not want to. Perhaps the storm does not allow choice. The most unsettling detail is not the storm, nor the silhouettes, nor the ruins. That it is the feeling that the storm is aware. That it recognizes new arrivals. That it decides who sees the town and who never will. If someone stands near the center long enough, the silhouettes begin to face them. Not approach, not reach, only turn, as though acknowledging a new resident. If you enter the town, the storm closes behind you. No one has ever seen an exit. Thank you, my friend, for wandering through these storm-ruined towns with me. America is full of places where nature took more than wood and brick. It took people. It took memories. It took voices that still beg to be heard every time the wind rises. If you ever drive past an abandoned town after a storm, and the streetlights flicker, and the air smells like rain, and you hear footsteps behind you on broken pavementa, leave. The storm may still be there, waiting for another name to carve into its clouds. Before we part tonight, tell me this. Thank you, my friend, for wandering through these storm-ruined towns with me. Would you dare walk into a storm-ruined town, knowing the wind remembers every soul it took? Or would you stay far away and pray the next storm does not come for you? Rest now. And may the sky stay quiet.